All right. Greenland. CBS News had to ask the president about Greenland. Are you really trying to buy Greenland? Go ahead and cue up my audio. Let's hear what the president had to say, because the way that the news was reporting it was like he was really pushing to try and take over Greenland. I told everybody, kind of calm down a little bit. I don't know if it had ever even come up, if it was true or not, but CBS News did ask the president if he was trying to buy Greenland. Here's how he responded.
Well, Greenland, I don't know, it got released somehow. It's just something we talked about. Denmark essentially owns it. We're very good allies with Denmark. We protect Denmark like we protect large portions of the world. So the concept came up, and I said, certainly I'd be strategically, it's interesting, and we'd be interested, but we'll talk to them a little bit. It's not number one on the burner, I can tell you that. Well, a lot of things could be done. I mean, essentially, it's a large real estate deal. A lot of things could be done. It's hurting Denmark very badly because they're losing almost $700 million a year carrying it. So they carry it at a great loss. And strategically for the United States, it would be nice. And we're a big ally of Denmark, and we help Denmark, and we protect Denmark, and we will. In fact, I'm supposed to stop. I'm thinking about going there. I'm not definitely going there, but I may be going. We're going to Poland, and then we may be going to Denmark. Not for this reason at all, but we're looking at it. It's not number one on the burner.
Okay, so CBS basically said, hey, any truth to the rumors that you're talking about buying Greenland? He's like, yeah, I don't even know how they got leaked. He's like, it was something that kind of came up. And you get the impression that it came up kind of in passing. Now, Greenland is extremely important strategically for our battle plans and everything with Europe. Like I said, anybody who served in the military when Air Land Battle 2000 was the primary doctrine to repel Soviet invasion of Europe, you all understand that very well. So it did come up. He said, hey, yeah, I would certainly seriously consider it. And he's right. I mean, we talked about the numbers last week. Denmark spends about $700 million a year subsidizing Greenland. So Greenland's economy is primarily fish. They do have natural resources. Uranium is one of them. So there's a pretty big uranium industry there. The United States needs uranium. It's one of the few things that we don't have a lot of. We don't have a lot of uranium, which is, again, one of the reasons the Uranium One scandal was such a big deal and didn't make any sense. It didn't make sense to sell uranium to the Russians when we have to import uranium right now anyway. Why would we get rid of it? So Greenland does have that. They do have some natural resources. Greenland was out there saying, look, we're not for sale last week. That's what they were saying. But they said that the president was right to be excited about the prospect of doing business with Greenland. And then he touted a bunch of things that are really good about doing business with Greenland. They used it as an opportunity to pitch themselves to the rest of the world, which is smart on their part. So it is strategically very important to the United States and its foreign policy interests. It does have resources, including uranium, which is very important to the United States. And Denmark, which is not exactly an economic powerhouse and not a very rich country. They do fine, don't get me wrong. They're just not wealthy. They spend between $600 and $700 million a year subsidizing Greenland. So Greenland, about 50% of its economy comes from fish and industry. Most of that is fish. And then the other 50% comes as basically a welfare check from Denmark. So if this ends up being a concern for Denmark, if Denmark looks at it and says, we're tired of paying for Greenland, yeah, it's nice to have it, and obviously it's strategically important and everything else, but it's $700 million a year that we could be using for other programs, perhaps they would be for sale. Who knows? Greenland may decide that they don't want somebody to have control over them at that point. It may not be in their best interest. They may not be a state. They might be a territory or something of that nature, like a Puerto Rico. But, who knows? But again, the president did admit, yeah, it came up. We talked about it, and I would seriously consider it, but it's not a priority. It's not something that we're seriously considering. It was just something that kind of came up, and I was asked if I would be interested in it, and I said, yeah, why not? It's an interesting deal. So the papers, as I suspected last week with this whole, he's pushing they made it seem like he was going to try and conquer Greenland, and not by military force, but use the threat of military force in order to, none of that appears to be the case. It warned you against that last week. not to buy into that, but the president did acknowledge that it came up. And that was one thing that I wasn't sure of. You know, he's talked about it in the past on social media before he was a candidate. He's talked about the United States acquiring Greenland. But I wasn't even sure if it was a real story, if he'd even considered it, or if it was a joke. And remember, some of the insiders who did leak this said, you know, some of them were more serious conversations, but most of them were pretty, you know, tongue in cheek. They were jokes, that sort of thing, that we'd be buying Greenland. But the president did acknowledge that it came up, and it would be something that he would consider, but it's not something that is even remotely on the radar. And it's certainly not being seen as a you know, priority at this point in time. And again, Greenland says that they're not for sale. So, you know, ultimately, I would assume at the end of the day, Greenland has veto power over what happens with it. But I don't know how the intricacies of ceasing to become a territory of another country works. To be perfectly honest with you, it doesn't happen all that much.